Describe more of that kind of, that universe, because what this was a time when you had record stores that were all across the region, and they were a huge gathering spot. You had, I guess, maybe you could talk a bit about the major players, which I imagine were Corvettes or some of the super, department stores, or maybe the department stores hadn't even come into being.
They weren't competition because they didn't have the attitude that we did.
Right. They didn't have the depth of the catalog that we did.
Right, and the skilled, knowledgeable staff to help you find that that rare nugget of music that you were looking for.
One of the greatest things about Empire was that most of us that worked there were musicians before you started. In addition to John Hurd, there was a guy named Chris Toby who just passed away a few months ago, as a matter of fact. He was a guitar player. He was like the classy, had the classy taste of the staff. I was the rocker. John Hurd was more into a classical thing, but he played, but he didn't really have to think. He was so good, he just played. Chris ended up going to the Berklee School of Music and later became a big executive with Rhino Records. But Chris eventually became the guitar player in the Newports after Blaine Smith left. But Chris was always trying to educate us as to the finer things, like songs by Dionne Warwick, written by Hal David and Burt Bacharach, songs that would have more than a 1-4-5 major chord progression. And the Newports had these two brothers that were the singers, the Willett brothers. And they did like Righteous Brothers and stuff like that. Really good vocalists, and the band was top notch. But
so clearly Jim Seward was kind of a character. What led him? I mean, and again, Empire was one of many, or correct me if I'm wrong, record stores, or there really weren't that.
There were only 4 or 5 of any consequence that I'm aware of. Variety, Waxy Maxi, Super Music City,
Turntable down Wisconsin Avenue.
That's probably it.
Well, there were some
of the drugstores and some of the,
the drug fair, and most of the drugstores back then had record departments.
Yeah, that's before we had Walmarts or any of those kind of places. The big box stores were not existent. Montgomery Ward's might have had some. Woodward and Lothrop never carried records because I worked there. I never saw them.
They when the head shops started sprouting up, a couple of them in northern Virginia,
Elysian Fields.
Elysian Fields.
Wisconsin.
There was a couple in Virginia, Joint Possession.
Right.
And they were
U.S. bongs.
Yeah, they were head shops / record stores, and posters and black lights and all that good stuff.
We did that too.
So that was really there really wasn't a lot of competition. But you had, I guess, didn't you have like Glenn's downtown, or what was music?
Serenade and the disc shop and.
But I mean, record stores seem to be an important part of that cultural landscape.
Oh yeah, especially Bethesda, because we had right around the corner we had the Freedom House. Remember Freedom House? And that was a gathering place for the politically active in the area of that generation, of our generation. And they'd have meetings there and rallies and all that, against the Vietnam War, which was the big thing at the time. As a Vietnam veteran myself, I found them of great interest.
The musicians tended to gather and use the record store as like a social scene, because, well, first of all, we had really deep catalog, and Billboard and Cashbox would call us
every day.
They called me about once a week and asked for the top 20 albums,
what was selling,
top 20 singles, and
when something new came out, we'd always have it playing over like when Apple 101, the Beatles' White Album came out, that was played 24/7 at the stores. Or when Nashville Skyline came out by Bob Dylan, I remember that one. And they didn't do that at the other big boxes, at the Wards and all them. They just hung on the shelf.
Yeah, you go into a drug fair and they just have bins of records. Nobody would know anything about it.
Right.
But being that most of us were musicians, and the musicians would come in and hang around and ask us what was new, what was good. There was always, back in the 65, 66, there was a a definite dichotomy between the hippies and the greasers. There weren't really any hippies in '65, but there was, like, you were beginning to see the glimmer of love with Arthur Lee and the Seeds and
Jefferson Airplane,
early Buffalo Springfield,
Steppenwolf.
Yeah, well, even before that. But there was definitely, there were the soul band people with the horn sections, and there were the rock band people that didn't have horns, and they were always bad mouthing each other. And I'll never forget the day the Revolver came out. There was a song on there with horns, "Got to Get You Into My Life," and Eddie Becker, who was the guitarist, I'm sure you've interviewed him. He really didn't remember this when we talked about it a few months ago, but he came into the store and he was always bad-mouthing the Beatles. Oh, they're a good band, but they don't have any horns. They can't be a real band. And so I put the record on. I didn't show him what it was and played about halfway through, and he goes, that's pretty good. I'm like, it's the fucking Beatles, man. Kind of rubbed his nose in it. He didn't like that, but that's okay.